And a 10 Pirate Ride. Given that this is already in the style of a game in FNAF VR, certainly does help in porting this to an arcade cabinet, but there would be some things that they'd have to change, like turning it into one of those like classic shooter arcade games where the screen scrolls as you fight off bad guys threatening innocent civilians, and it tells you what to shoot and what not to shoot. Yeah, that's the kind of arcade game I see this as, except instead of scrolling sideways, it moves forward like the cart does in the ride in FNAF VR. It could just be a simple aim and shoot kind of thing, but maybe they could add some animatronics sneaking in and throwing some cake or pizza at you that you'd have to shoot to block. This would be in order to end the game early, so that you'd then have to pay more tokens, or just straight up money depending on how the system was run, but based on modern practices I think it would be a token system because it probably would end up making them more money in the long run. And at 9, Fun with Plush Trap. Fun with Plush Trap is a simple game that would operate much like it did in FNAF 4 for the arcade cabinet. Despite having more of a presence in FNAF VR, the simplicity of the controls in FNAF 4 would be exactly how this game operates, just in an arcade cabinet, which would require you to just push a button to get the light to shine, and then you let go of it to turn it off and allow Plush Trap to move, giving you the 60-second countdown to a jump scare if you fail to stop him before the timer, or if he gets to you before you stop him. It's a simple game with a simple premise, but it would work incredibly well for an arcade machine, and I think plenty of people would play it. And maybe you could have like multiple levels like Donkey Kong style, with various smaller nightmare animatronics like Fun with Nightmare Balloon Boy, Fetch, Mini Arenas, etc. Assuming that Plush Trap isn't a form of Fetch already. And today, Plush Babies. The 2 Plush Baby mini games where you have to look around for the various somehow animated baby plushes before they get to you is an interesting concept that with some tweaking could work for an arcade cabinet. It would require a joystick as the spotlight following the joystick, you just move it around to move the spotlight, but it's something that I think would work kind of well, but it would have to be done right. I don't know exactly what done right would look like. I'm an ideas guy, okay, I'm not a programmer, but I'm sure that it wouldn't be that difficult to work out, I hope. It wouldn't be as detailed or scary as the main minigame in FNAF VR, but it would still be something that would work decently well. It may not be the most popular game at the arcade, but that's why you have multiple levels, including the hard mode one and the DLC one in the pumpkin patch. Plus, that's why it's only number 8, because it would be harder to get done properly. And it's 7, Burke and Hare. The Burke and Hare murders were 16 serial killings committed over a period of about 10 months in 1828 in Edinburgh, Scotland. The 2 men who committed these killings, last names Burke and Hare, were doing it because they also sold the corpses to Robert Knox for dissection at his anatomy lectures. There's actually a shortage of corpses in Edinburgh, and thus people actually started grave robbing and selling the corpses rather than selling the possessions, since a loophole in the system only considered it a theft if the body was taken with its clothes. Naked corpses were fine to take though, apparently. They didn't really think that one through. These 2 were killing in the name of science, something that we suspect William was doing as well. However, they actually were, in a messed up way, contributing to the furthering of science, whereas William is only doing it for his own selfish reasons and to become immortal. After Hare was given immunity to confess to the murders so that they could convict Burke, Burke was sentenced to death. Shortly afterwards, his corpse was dissected and his skeleton was displayed at the Anatomical Museum of Edinburgh Medical School, where, as of 2021, it actually still remains. Oh, and by the way, the reason they're known as Burke and Hare was because both of their first names are William. Yeah, so maybe Afton's wife is named something similar. And at 6, Claw Machine. This is pretty dark, but you people seem to love that kind of thing. So what about a claw machine that was designed to be Baby while she was grabbing Elizabeth? Is that too far? Like a claw machine that's built to look like the baby animatronic on the outside with a window on the stomach where the claw would come out. And that's where the claw machine is. I think that would not only be a fun way to make it a FNAF themed claw machine, but it would also be dark as hell, and I love that kind of thing. Plus, it's about a fictional death, so it's not really distasteful. The idea also stands that this is something out of the box for this list, and I wanted to see what you thought about it, rather than just ranting on about the various minigames in the series for 10 minutes. However, it's time to get back to that, so moving on! Halfway through into number 5, Fetch. Fetch was introduced into Fazbear Frights books and is a robotic dog made by Fazbear Inc. that gets a little too loving. So much so that it will actually brutally murder the girl you ask to homecoming, even though her dad is a supervillain. Sorry, Peter, but at least you won't have to feel bad about sending your dad to prison. Either way, a robotic dog that will kill anything you love is absolutely terrifying and should be taken care of as soon as possible. Like, this is why you spay and neuter your animals, people. That's why The Price is Right would always say that. But in all seriousness, could you imagine if this thing was real? Like, if you randomly started getting texts from a robotic dog that followed you home, that instead of bringing you dead birds or squirrels, instead brings you the bloody arm of your crush. That sounds like something the Winchesters would end up fighting after it was manifested by some, like, 7-year-old. Oh, that would, yeah. It's like how they find a body in one of those crime shows, like Bones, and they're like, oh, this robotic dog just found this rotting arm and then put it in my bed. Like, that's like Palant levels of crazy, and if you know, you know. And at 4, Security Puppet. Ah yes, Security Puppet. One of the 3 mini-games required to play through to completion for the Lorekeeper ending of FNAF 6. And let's be honest, you should always play mini-games through to completion, otherwise it's just mean. The Security Puppet minigame was pretty simple. Keep the assigned child away from the exit. However, the only catch is that there was no assigned child until the 3rd time booting up the game, where the child will already be outside, thus you failing. We know that this child is Charlie, who goes on to possess the puppet, and this was the only time we've seen a kill from 2 different angles. However, a game kind of like a Where's Waldo kind of thing with security bracelets seems like a wonderful and simple idea, especially when we know what the character is really trying to prevent. Would there be a green bracelet character, or would we only be looking for the green band? I don't know, it would be up to Scott. Also, Scott, or I guess whoever takes over next, please do this. Getting close to the end in number 3, Thomas Lee Dillon. Thomas Lee Dillon was a serial sniper found guilty of killing 5 men, again with the 5. Directed by voices in his head, Dillon killed people randomly. According to attending psychiatrists, Dillon's delusions of grandeur spilled over into the reality of his life and the lives of his victims. His victims were killed by a high-powered rifle while they participated in outdoor activities, sometimes hundreds of miles from Dillon's home. Authorities did not link the killings to Dillon until he actually sent a letter to a local paper. After the FBI put together a criminal profile of the killer, a friend of Dillon's actually brought into the attention of the authorities, which in my mind is very close to the story of William Afton. The amount of victims, the authorities only investigating those murders after they got tipped off by a friend of the killer, in Afton's case that being Henry, the delusions or the voices in his head could be him being possessed. But honestly, a whole load of these people are just so much like William, it's terrifying. Penultimately, in number 2, Midnight Motorist. Midnight Motorist is another one of those games that you could test in FNAF 6 that just feels right. The game is pretty simple, but it's certainly exactly what we need in an arcade cabinet at a pizzeria. A game for the short attention span of a child. You simply drive around until you run into 3 things, then boom, it's game over. You get tickets based on how far you went, or it's one of those lame ones where you don't get tickets at all because there's no feasible way to calculate that, which would also be kind of understandable. Or you just get 3. You know the ones I'm talking about. Midnight Motorist would make a good arcade game aside from the whole yellow guy mustard man debacle, so cut that part out and you're in the money, baby. Go forth and collect the king's tax of tickets and tokens. And finally, in at number 1, Fruity Maze. Fruity Maze, I think, was the obvious first choice here because while yes, the game does progressively get darker, it doesn't have to. You can stick to the original like level 1 Fruity Maze motif, add a proper goal or objective, and then have a weird FNAF version of a Pac-Man style game. Boom, you're done. Just don't make it depressing and allow the player to continue as long as they can, just like a normal Pac-Man game would work, and you're good. And you're golden. Golden Bonnie, dare I say. And maybe throw in a certain level where it's like the messed up dog, flowers, and blood kind of thing just to make sure it's authentic, because knowing these comments, you'll all be disappointed and even get mad if these things don't turn into something dark and twisted. I don't know about something like new being added to the series in the real world, but like, I don't know if you'd want that to be twisted and disturbing. Like if it was a new arcade game, for example, but something like Fruity Maze, you'd insist on it. So yeah, I know you're all sick and I love you for it. And 10 mini arenas. Why are the mini arenas so damn creepy? Like, they're not scary per se, but they literally tear Ballora to pieces, so that's something, at least. Like, the mini arenas are basically the robotic version of those kids, like, in your neighborhood that are always screaming or causing trouble at all hours of the day. And like, you know, they go to a nearby school so that you literally always have to deal with them no matter what. Or they run down the street when you knock on their door to see their older brother, and then their family is so damn lazy that you have to take off after him running down the street and after him because his family's not going to do anything, even though it's literally a toddler running down the street in nothing but a diaper at 11 in the morning. then you catch him in front of your other friend's house, and then you end up having that kid pull your hair, kicking and punching you all the way back to his house. At least he wasn't screaming, because then you might have gotten arrested. Then they don't even thank you. Did I just say all that out loud? Okay, well, my old neighbors were trash. Okay, that's a story for another day, but that's what the mini arenas remind me of, except they can kill me or stuff themselves into my body while I sleep in order to escape their underground storage facility. And I don't think that kid was gonna do that. In at 9, Circus Baby. Let's move on to one of the deadliest animatronics in the game. Baby has a on-screen death count of 2. The first being William's daughter Elizabeth, and then the other being Henry, as we see in FNAF World. But it's not just the ability to kill that's crazy, it's the incredibly advanced technology present inside this animatronic that's impressive. The ability to contain a whole child-grabbing claw, and then also a containment chamber for said child is pretty damn impressive, but also the ability to use pins on her body to change her appearance is also pretty nuts. Not to mention all of her other features like ice cream dispensing and balloons inflating at her fingertips. But all of this again is overshadowed by the absolute carnage Baby has the ability to wreak. Dare I say, let there be carnage. And honestly, that's probably just the tip of the iceberg for the animatronic, not even including the Fazbear Frights versions. And I know that this isn't a Minecraft video, but did you know that only 14% of people who watch these videos are actually subscribed? You could be watching our videos all the time and not actually know that you're not subscribed. So, if you do like these kinds of videos, hit the subscribe button. It's free, it helps us out a whole lot, and you can always unsubscribe if you want to, okay? It's not like a marriage, okay? We don't get half your stuff if you choose to unsubscribe. Okay, now, on with the video. In at 8, the Scooper. Now, I know you may be mad and think that this is like a stupid point, but like hear me out, okay? The Scooper may seem like a weird but kinda normal thing, at least by FNAF standards at first, but with the blueprint revealing how this actually works, this thing is an incredible piece of technology. It can inject whatever it ends up scooping with Remnant, a molten metal possessed by souls, that is capable of keeping a person alive after removing their insides, as we see with Michael. Replacing it, because, you know, he gets his innards replaced with innards, and then, like, you know, is able to walk around, and then after those robotic parts leave his body, he can still just chill. In essence, making him just a walking case of flesh. Unless it didn't actually remove anything and instead just opened him up and then had the animatronics go around his bones, but that would still require some serious juice to keep alive, and that's pretty damn impressive. But also horrifying, because while he may look more like he's just bruising, if the purple on Michael's skin is actually decay like some suggest, that Remnant injector is actually able to animate a dead corpse, in essence creating zombies, which would then start a zombie apocalypse, and that's been done to death, no pun intended, so you should all understand how bad of an idea that is, okay? Zombie apocalypses generally aren't good, especially animatronic-fueled zombie apocalypses created by intense agony-possessed metal that gets injected into someone's no-no square. And it's 7 Happiest Day. The Happiest Day minigame is some of the most important lore and moments in the series, with the original missing children from the first missing children's incident from 1985 getting their souls released, showing that there are multiple ways to deal with what would later be called Remnant, the infusion of metal and soul, or rather metal and extreme emotion, or maybe in Springtrap's case, metal. Get it? Because his human meat is also in the suit. Never mind. Either way, the Happiest Day minigame is not a simple one-shot minigame. There's some build-up to it. It's like the main story of FNAF 3, so seeing those various minigames and glitches come together into a single arcade cabinet would be a beautiful sight. Almost as beautiful as Glamrock Chica. I mean, as my idea for a real FNAF pizzeria, which you should go totally watch, by the way. It's in one of the corners. I don't know which one anymore. And at 6, the Twisted Ones. Well, the Twisted Ones do certainly seem to live up to their name. The Twisted animatronics are these horribly disfigured creatures that get no love from their mother, unlike an ugly duckling. The thing is, these don't grow into swans. Instead, they use another bit of tech that I'll get into later to disguise themselves. They also dig deep into the ground and wait until the middle of the night to crawl out and then take kids who wander away from their mommies. This legit sounds like some urban legend that parents tell their kids to make sure they stay home or get home after dark. I mean, I don't really know what else to say about them. That's the way the news goes. Halfway through into number 5, Arthur Gary Bishop. Arthur Gary Bishop was an American serial killer in 1983, and as a result of a routine police investigation, he confessed to the murders of 5 young boys between 1979 and 1983. Bishop was born in Hinckley, Utah, and was the eldest of 6 brothers. Bishop was raised as a devout Latter-day Saint, Mormon, and was an Eagle Scout and an honor student, which is already suspicious in comparison to Afton, given that Afton was also regarded as intelligent given his talent for animatronics, especially in the 80s, and his passion for business. But not only that, Bishop also operated under an alias. Bishop was arrested for embezzlement in February of 1978 and given a 5-year suspended sentence, but he skipped his parole and fled to Salt Lake City, living under the alias of Roger Downs. Under this alias, Bishop would then kill 5 boys between 1979 and 1983. It's also interesting that multiple key dates in Bishop's life line up closely to releases of FNAF games. On July 14th, 1993, he was arrested, and FNAF 4 came out on July 23rd, 9 days after that. Well, not in the same year, but you know what I mean. Bishop's first kill was on October 14th, 1979, and Sister Location was released on October 7th. I mean, it's not concrete, but it's certainly interesting. Plus, also he was caught in 1983, the same year that Crying Child was bit. In at 4, Lonely Freddy. Lonely Freddy already in a way has a parallel in our world, well, kind of. Like that trope where someone becomes your friend and then becomes more like you and then tries taking over your life. I feel like that's a thing, but maybe I dreamt that ages ago and forgot about it, but I mean, it's possible, but also just plain old identity theft is another version of Freddy, okay? Identity theft isn't a joke, Jim. A Lonely Freddy was introduced in the Fazbear Frights books and is basically meant to explain what Psychic Friend Fredbear is, but a robot that steals your body and then traps your consciousness into its original robot body. What the ever-loving hell? Why is that so goddamn terrifying, especially in concept? But what if it was actually a thing? Well, it's easy to say that we would just try to avoid them, but we wouldn't know that they exist. We would just be lonely kids dreaming about having friends and someone who doesn't hurt you when all of a sudden a robot wants to be our friend. It would be vicious and definitely would have gotten me when I was a kid. Hell, it could get me now. Like, I legit wanted a robot friend because they wouldn't end up turning on me or something like that. And then here we go. Here's this. I just wanted someone to play games with. And if those people ended up not being people but instead robots, I would have been fine with it. That would have been fine with me. Except these would have taken over my body, so that would have kind of been a bummer. But that begs the question, when you get put inside the Lonely Freddy, would you then get the ability to take over another person's body, or would you just be trapped in there permanently? Either way, it's terrifying, but I want to know. Getting close to the end in number 3, Deliver Pizzas. The mini game that opens FNAF 6 isn't like anything else we've seen. Okay, well, it's kind of like Take Cake, but this time you're throwing pizzas at kids' screaming faces, and honestly, I love that idea. The fantasy of throwing a pizza in the screaming kid's face has been present ever since those little buggers in my old building bounced their basketball off my door and made my dog go absolutely nuts. But even without my secret thoughts, this would still be a fun arcade game, and I'm not letting you fight me on this. The difficulty of the game was already defined even before the real FNAF 6 started, and it was cool. But then throw in added difficulty of it being a full game and you have a whole new experience. At least, I think it would be at least. So, can't be sure unless we try. Penultimately, in at number 2, the spring locks. The spring lock mechanisms is probably the most intuitive thing that FNAF World's invented. The ability to move robotic parts out of the way enough for a human to fit inside is insane, and while it may be dangerous, we also drive over 100 kilometers per hour in huge metal death boxes, so can we really complain? Yes we can. Because while yes, cars have their faults, they are nothing compared to the ability to be both animatronic and suit. And then, that's an incredible feat of technology. People keep saying that spring locks actually exist in the comments, and I don't think that's true, okay? No one has ever given me a source, and it's not a thing, okay? Yet, these are also terrifying because of the same reasons in-game. Someone can dress in it and pretend to be a robot, and then everything can clamp down on you in any second, as it has multiple times before. It can trap you, okay? It could, if it were real, crush you, and do everything that we learn about from the books and the games, okay? It would basically just make your life hell for fun, especially when it can be a robot, and the man who was once inside of it can smile knowing that you and all your friends can't fight off a huge hunk of metal. But also, I would never get into one of those things. Even if there hadn't been an incident, that seems like a final destination moment. I wouldn't do it, even if it's in my contract. If they tell me get in this or you're fired, I quit. God. Or actually, no, I let them fire me so I get a severance package, if they have one. And then I can sue them for wrongful termination. And finally, in number 1, the Illusion sound discs. I used to mention these a lot, at the very least, because these are astounding. If you didn't already know, in the original FNAF novel trilogy, it was revealed that the Twisted One's animatronics used discs that changed how others saw them, basically creating an illusionary appearance using sound emitted from that disc that messed with your brainwaves. However, the mere existence of these discs puts everything we know about the series into question. Like, how do we know that anything is real? FNAF 1 has us hallucinate multiple different things like it's me, along with multiple news clippings and posters. What if that was all the discs? And if it was, what if other things were changed by the discs as well? Like, what does the pizzeria really look like? Do the animatronics have different appearances than what we actually see? Are they more rotten? And given that they were leaking mucus and blood beforehand, I feel like they should have been decommissioned. But if this technology existed, I would have trust issues even more so than I do now. Honestly, this might exist, and we just don't know about it. Disney is probably using it because they're like the evil corporation of the world, right? That's a thing, is that we're never getting sponsored by Disney, but that's fine. And at 10, Brian Wells. This is certainly an interesting case that you may not really think relates to William, but let me explain my thought process. Brian Douglas Wells was an American pizza delivery driver who was killed during a complex bank robbery plot. The plot involved a collar bomb, a scavenger hunt, the robbery itself, and a pizza delivery man. Following an attempt to rob PNC Bank, Wells was surrounded by police. That's when the bomb around his neck ended up detonating, killing him. And while his family denies that he was a part of it, investigators and a federal prosecutor concluded that Wells was a knowing participant in the bank robbery. However, he was told that the bomb was fake, and he did not know that his co-conspirators intended for him to die. Now, I think that it was probably detonated because he got caught and they didn't want him to rat on them, and that is the prevailing theory amongst these people as well, amongst the prosecutor and whatnot. But aside from being a pizza delivery man for Mamma Mia's Pizzeria, what possible connection could he have to Afton? Well, being killed by a device that was supposed to be safe, for one, the spring locking and the collar, being betrayed by your peers, in William's case most likely Henry, and the affinity for complex plans. I feel like this may have been at least a slight source of inspiration, especially since this came up when I searched for pizza place serial killers, because I was hoping that there would be one. That's weird to say. Let's just move on. And at 9, Andrew Cunanan. Andrew Cunanan was born in San Diego, California, and eventually settled in San Francisco's Castro district and socialized with older, wealthy gay men while indulging heavily in illicit substances. It's unclear what set him off, but he began a cross-country killing spree of 5 unknown victims, the last of which was actually fashion designer Gianni Versace. Cunanan killed himself on a Miami boathouse in 1997, and if that didn't set off an alarm, congratulations, you have not been ruined by FNAF yet. However, William Afton also had 5 victims at least, but definitely only had 5 when FNAF 1 and even around FNAF 2 was released. And while FNAF 1 does take place in 1993, many have theorized it to instead take place in 1997, which is unlikely given the minimum wage of the times and the connection to another real person, but nonetheless, it's certainly an interesting case of more possible dates lining up and the same number of victims. You know, a lot of people on this list are actually going to have 5 victims, and it's extremely creepy. And at 8, Nathan Dunlap. In December of 1993, after Chuck E. Cheese had closed in Aurora, Colorado, Margaret Kohlberg, who was the manager of this Chuck E. Cheese, was tallying receipts in the back room. While she was doing that, Bobby Stevens was scrubbing down the kitchen, and Ben Grant, Colleen O'Connor, and Sylvia Crawwell were all working in the main party area. However, there was someone hiding in the bathroom, 19-year-old Nathan Dunlap, who earlier that year had begun working as a cook, but was fired after an argument over his hours. But this time he was looking for revenge. He exited the bathroom and began firing, killing everyone in the building. First Sylvia, then Ben, then Colleen. Then he went into the kitchen where he shot Bobby, although Bobby ended up surviving and was actually a key witness in his case. Then Nathan went to the back room where Margaret opened the safe before being shot twice. Nathan filled her bag with $1,500 cash, arcade tokens, and keychains, but thanks to the security cameras, he was promptly arrested and sentenced to death. Thanks to MatPat and his first game theory on FNAF, this one is fairly well known, hence why it's closer to the top, but if I didn't include it, I feel like everyone in the comments would have asked me why, so there you go. And at 7, Nightmare Animatronics. While not the epitome of horror, the nightmare animatronics are certainly not the nicest of fellows. Not only that, but they are in fact not real. They're supposed to be in your brain, which makes them even more terrifying if you ask me. Because not only do these illusions cause horrific visions to anyone who knows about them, they also end up killing a coma patient. Crying Child, as we know, is in the hospital in FNAF 4, making this game just a nightmare. However, getting caught by one of these animatronics causes him so much stress that he actually dies, which is absolutely insane when you look at it like that. These are so scary to him that it gives him a legit heart attack, or just makes his heart stop working entirely, since we know that's what happens instead of brain death at the end of the game, thanks to the flatline at the end, which is horrible and incredibly sad, but also terrifying. And at 6, Ted Bundy. During an interview with Daco, PJ Haywood, the voice actor for William Afton in Sister Location, FNAF AR, and Ultimate Custom Night, said that Scott Cawthon described William as being a charismatic, smooth-talking snake oil salesman, which coincides with book William being able to convince anyone of anything. This is actually very similar to how Ted Bundy had been described. Bundy was regarded as charismatic and handsome, traits that he exploited to win the trust of both his victims and society as a whole. He would typically approach his victims in public places, either feigning a physical impairment such as an injury or impersonating an authority figure, before bludgeoning them until they were unconscious. While he did operate nearly a decade before Afton started his spree, those are merely just year numbers. But one of the most interesting facts, however, is that in 1975, Bundy was arrested and jailed in Utah for aggravated kidnapping and attempted criminal assault. In Utah, where the games and the crimes of Afton take place. Halfway through into number 5, Corn Maze. Corn Maze is one of the most stressful games in all of FNAF VR, compared only to the likes of the hallway from that very same DLC. Corn Maze revolves around you walking through a maze made of walls, not corn, for some reason, in search of colored keys. These keys unlock their respectively colored gate and result in you winning. However, Grim Foxy is chasing you and he always knows where you are. The only way to really get him off your tail, pun intended, is to hide behind cardboard cutouts after he notices you. The maze is also filled with clusters of crows that will alert Foxy to your location if stepped on, which will result in him finding you faster, as well as scaring the living hell out of you. This game, in the same vein as the Help Wanted flat mode version, but controlled with a joystick and buttons, would work incredibly well, and you wouldn't have to find all 4 keys to unlock a secret one. You just don't have a secret one and you're golden. Man, I'm a genius. In at 4, Donald Harvey. Harvey belonged to a group of psychos known as the Angels of Mercy who claimed to kill for the benefit of the victim. Harvey was convicted of 37 of his more than 57 suspected murders, and he confessed to as many as 87. When Harvey was hired at the Cincinnati VA Medical Hospital, he managed to collect over 30 pounds of cyanide which he had kept in his home. He also kept diaries and detailed notes on each one of his victims, including how he killed them. That gives me just that's intense William Afton vibes. Not for some certain reasons, but the delusion of him thinking that he was doing it for the benefit of the victims or just for any benefit it's horrifying, okay? It's the exact same kind of delusion that I could see William having. And a similar delusion to what he seems to have in the games. In the books, he's not exactly like this from my memory, but the game version certainly seems to be the type, okay? Especially given his appearance in the Foxy Go 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 minigame where he's smiling. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, human robots. This is something I'm sure people won't think is scary, okay? Some scary good, maybe, but hey, the fact that there are robots that are actually able to look like humans is terrifying. That's such a scary thing. In the original FNAF novel trilogy, it's revealed that Charlotte, the main protagonist of the books, is in fact one in a series of 4 robots meant to allow her to grow up properly after being killed at an early age. But not only is she a robot, also apparently she's also baby. At least from what I remember reading about the books, Charlotte's robot was also able to look like baby thanks to the pins on her body that I mentioned earlier. Yeah, that is the epitome of horror. Who in their right mind would think of a concept like that? And then, what if it was real? We would all be goners. Imagine the fembots from Austin Powers, that's basically this. And then all the down bads would be trying to give it to them and then they'd get themselves scooped. I'm surprised it didn't happen in the actual novels, since that one guy had his gears turning, if you know what I mean.
And if you do, Can you please explain it to me? Because I'm not even quite sure what I said there.
And ultimately in at number 2, John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy, as I'm sure you know, was an American serial killer who killed 33 young men and boys. Gacy regularly performed at children's hospitals and charitable events as Pogo or Patches the Clown, personas that he had devised. He became known as the Killer Clown due to his public services as a clown prior to the discovery of these crimes, but jeez. Gacy committed all of the crimes inside of his ranch house, which is a horrible idea, just like William killing inside of his own pizzeria. Typically, he would lure a victim to his home and then dupe them into donning handcuffs on the pretext of demonstrating a magic trick. And while this is absolutely disgusting and really makes me sick to my stomach, there are still a few similarities to Afton. Okay, killing in a place related to you. For Gacy, it was his ranch house, and for Afton, it's his business. The target demographic is also the same with young people, although Afton also killed girls, which I don't even want. Ugh. And while you may think that this is a stretch, even FNAF itself made the connection with FNAF AR through the clown Springtrap skin. Intentional or not, come on, that's a connection. And finally, in at number 1, Robert Berdella. Robert Berdella is, to me, the seemingly perfect inspiration for William Afton. Not only did this man own his own business called Bob's Bizarre Bazaar, where he reportedly sold human skulls, but he also seemingly started his killing spree in 1984. The MO is certainly not the same. Berdella would drug and kidnap men that he met in bars and on the streets, but the same idea of killing people you meet in a restaurant scene is carried over to William. There is no confirmed inspiration for William, hence this list, but there are certainly a decent amount of similarities between these two. In fact, if you combine like all the serial killers we talked about on this list, especially these last 4, you'll basically get a real William Afton, and I don't like that, okay? That's horrifying. But again, that was the point of this list, so it was a way for me to talk about FNAF without having to talk about FNAF, okay? I didn't go into too much detail with these because, well, I'm sure you can guess why, but yeah. Either way, I think that this is a pretty... The similarities are scary, that's all I have to say. In at 10, Halloween Special. Given FNAF's track record with various expansions around Halloween, I feel like it would only make sense to have some form of Halloween special thing around these delivery restaurants. Whether it be a special menu item or maybe like even a discount, FNAF has released so much Halloween DLC with FNAF 4 and FNAF VR that it would just make sense to have something to do with Halloween with this delivery service, okay? And like I said, whether it be like a limited menu item, like maybe like some candy from FNAF VR, or as Amanda suggested to me, chocolate cockroaches, since apparently you can eat cockroaches in FNAF VR. Apparently it's also required to get the Let's Eat achievement, which is hilarious, but it could also just be like a random Halloween theme for the store, alright? You can just like as you're scrolling through, you can see like Springtrap or the puppet watching us while we just scroll and needlessly spend our money only to make us sit on our couches and watch more YouTube. I mean, like, if you're watching us, that's probably the best way to spend the inevitable end of the world, but I mean, like, come on. And at 9, Fizzy Faz. Fizzy Faz is a set of items that can be found in Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, and using them, or like obtaining them, actually increases the player's stamina, and they can be found in different locations around the map. Fizzy Faz appears to be a Fazbear Entertainment branded soda line, featuring the main animatronics of this game, and sold like exclusively at the Pizzaplex. Each member of the animatronic band is featured on the cans, and they have like a flavor that represents their like color, I think, which is kind of weird, but that's a whole other thing. Okay, there's an orange flavored Fizzy Faz sponsored by Glamrock Freddy. It was located in like a control room when you first enter basement 1. There's a sour lime flavored Fizzy Faz sponsored by Montgomery Gator. I mean, it could have been something other than lime. I feel like lime, so like gotta do the lemon and lime to actually make it work, but whatever. Pink Lemonade sponsored by Glamrock Chica, and a grape flavored Fizzy Faz sponsored by Roxanne. Again, I feel like there could have been better options for that, because I mean, like, she has hardly any purple on her. She has more red, so you could have done cherry, but you know what, that's just me. But having those cans, or even just that kind of branding available on the app, would be pretty sick, even if it's just like in the style of like those Funko soda cans, you know, like that have the figure inside, or maybe it's just like a beer cozy or something. That would be fun. And at 8, themed meals. Just like how McDonald's has like the Happy Meals, Freddy's could have some form of themed meals as well, whether they be based on the games or on a favorite animatronic. I think that there would definitely be some form of like pizza, like a food theme that you can order, especially with the pizza. If there aren't like different combinations for the different popular animatronics, I'm gonna be mad, okay? I need to be able to order Chica's favorite pizza mashup, okay? I need the Freddy Fazbear Meat Lovers, or maybe the Monty Gator Meat Lovers, because he's a crocodile, and crocodiles are meat. You know what I mean, okay? The Freddy Fazbear one might have like anchovies on it, because like he's a bear, and anchovies are fish, you know? I think it would certainly help make this place feel like more of a Fazbear delivery service than just another pizza restaurant, okay? Like how Mr. Beast has like the whole like Carl's grilled cheese or like the Chandler burger on his store. Yeah, this is that kind of concept, except it's just themed for animatronics instead of people. And it's 7, Vanny. With Vanny being the villain in the last game and already one of the most popular characters in the entire series, I know that she's not an animatronic, okay, but chill. There are bound to be plenty of costumes of the character. However, this specific one from Rojita Ubu on Twitter is probably the most accurate and creepiest one I've seen. And yes, I said Ubu with a straight face, and let's ignore it. Vanny being a reluctant follower does in a way technically make this also a glitch trap cosplay as well. We won't talk about it because that's not what counts unless you want to consider glitch trap an animatronic, in which case it's totally fine if you want to think that. This costume is probably the most realistic one on this list because, well, I mean, Vanny in the games ended up making her own suit and it's just a human inside, whereas the others like Scrap Baby or Springtrap are animatronics as well as being part human, be it soul or another body. And Rojita's costume actually follows the exact same concept. It's just a person who makes their own suit, which potentially makes this the scariest thing of all, but honestly, considering how she is currently the serial killer in the series, at least the version that actually has like proper working limbs, I would very much appreciate not seeing a real Vanny delivering me my pizza balls. No thanks. And it's 6 toys! There are so many toys in the FNAF universe that I don't even know. I don't even need to talk about Security Breach in this sense. In FNAF VR, there are a ton of prize counter items, okay? In this game, prizes are unlocked at the end of the levels, okay? The player will open a present with a hand crank. It's kind of similar to a Jack-in-the-Box thing. Then you'll receive a random prize or a jump scare. There are 105 separate prize items in Help Wanted, and 70 of those are not food items. Even if we went to like the action figures only, much like how McDonald's and Burger King gave out or used to give out toys, the Happy Meals, maybe like the Fazbear delivery service could do the same thing, but not a Happy Meal, because you know, copyright. I don't quite know how it would work. They would need smaller versions of those action figures and whatnot, and I feel like it would be a lot, but it would be a little something extra for the kids who wouldn't really be satisfied having just FNAF branded food, which I mean is understandable. Like, you don't buy food, you rent it. Am I right, fellas? Just me? Okay, well, I don't really want to keep a greasy branded pizza box around my apartment as a memory, okay? So like, an optional toy would be a good idea. I also have no FNAF merch aside from that one shirt that I can't find anymore, so yeah. Halfway through into number 5, Nightmare Freddy. Nightmare Freddy is one of the most iconic versions of the Freddy character, even if there are only 3 games that feature them, those being FNAF 4, Ultimate Custom Night, and FNAF VR. However, this Nightmare Freddy cosplay is absolutely insane, and in my opinion, it would have been the front runner for the Coupe de France cosplay competition, but that was back in 2017. The video was uploaded by YouTube channel Gorgon Geek, and this guy plays the robot thing very well, but as soon as he drops that microphone, he goes into like terror mode, which is certainly something to behold, okay? I would have enjoyed it if he had the frettles with him, but the moving mouth is certainly a nice touch on this costume, especially with the attempted jump scares that they do in the video, like the Imagine if this guy got up on stage in a freaking Nightmare Freddy costume and then just started twerking. That would have won them the gold, okay? I don't know if they won or not, but that if they had it, that's what would have gotten you the gold, okay? But also, if Nightmare Freddy was the one delivering me my pizza, I don't think that I would actually end up eating it, just from sheer fear that they would have poisoned it, or maybe you put too many chili flakes on it. I mean, like, come on, look at me. And for branding, I think that the appeal of this delivery service isn't going to be the food exactly, okay? It's going to be the fact that you're ordering from a place known as Freddy Fazbear's. And that's really the whole driving point behind this business venture. That's what it is, okay? Honestly, the only reason people order from Mr. Beast Burger is because they like Mr. Beast and or want him to notice them. Kind of like tier 3 subs on Twitch. Yeah, despite it being a very, very low possibility, because, you know, it's Uber Eats, you still try. And before you tell me it's because you like the food, that seems impossible to me. I mean, unless Mr. Beast Burger is different in the States. Okay, I've ordered it twice and maybe got a couple of the most disappointing meals I've gotten on a delivery app, okay? The worst one was when the driver put my pizza box upside down, but like that's not the point. My point is that if people are going to order Fazbear's, it's going to be because it's Fazbear, okay? Even if the food isn't great. So, driving home the branding and making it really good and iconic is going to do a lot for them in the long run, especially after the novelty wears off when it first releases. Trust me, okay? I went to school for this kind of thing, so I have a pretty good idea. Plus, also, have you seen this channel? Branding things with FNAF is kind of my thing. In at 3, Withered Bonnie. This Withered Bonnie cosplay is probably one of the scariest FNAF cosplays I've seen and the scariest Bonnie cosplay. It is incredible that someone could actually do this, and it comes from the YouTube user The Nick of Time. At first, I legitimately thought that this was CGI instead of an actual costume, but lo and behold, it was just an insanely cool costume. Glowing eyes, seemingly actual aluminum parts, and a chest that opens that you can push out with the other hand, which results in actually quite the decent jump scare, okay? Frankly, in the video, I was kind of taken aback by that, so you know what? If that's where my pizza came out of, I don't know if I would take it. This kind of thing always impresses the hell out of me because, like, so far, the closest I've come to making a full costume was when I helped someone work on a costume, okay? But that's the closest I've got, and I can't even think to make something like this. So if you show up and my pizza pops out of, like, your abdomen chest area, I'm gonna tip you 100%. That's insane. But ultimately, in at number 2, inside jokes. Now, this kind of goes hand in hand with the exotic butters thing, but I'm thinking like fandom-specific jokes. You know, like, yes, exotic butters, but what about the rest? Amanda suggested Coffee's Coffee from Scott's other game, A Desolate Hope, and honestly, I think that that's a great idea. I mean, Coffee's character is canon in FNAF thanks to the FNAF 3 VR Easter egg where Coffee can appear on your desk, and maybe A Desolate Hope is one of the in-universe Scott's other games that he made before he was being paid by Fazbear to start making fun of their tragedies, so I think that it would absolutely be possible and funny to include that as a bit of a nod to the fans. There are also plenty of other jokes that they could reference, be it in the packaging or other products. Obviously, there were the ones that we mentioned previously, pizza for the main cast of the animatronics, toys that could have some jokes as well, like maybe a Buff Helpy toy, which would be actually terrifying. Please don't do that. There are, like, even if some of the boxes have like Toy Freddy being aggressive or something, I think that those would be a great way to help make the fans feel like they're getting a little bit of extra value out of their order because they know the series. Otherwise, like, what's the point of being invested in it if there's no jokes or hints to pick up on, you know? Like, kind of like a relationship, because all those have gone so well for me. I know what I'm talking about. Yeah, giant flashing sarcasm sign, like the gif from Big Bang Theory, you know? And finally, in at number 1, secret lore. I think finally the thing that we all want is for there to be some kind of secret lore that is going to be revealed with these restaurants. Like maybe a secret code here and there, or maybe they end up revealing who caused the bite of 87 for real, or finally confirm that Crying Child is the one you should not have killed because no one believes me. But no matter what way you slice it, I think that we're all hoping for and even kind of expecting some secrets to come out of these restaurants. I mean, we got it with the Fazbear Frights books, we got it with the sister location toys because, you know, you bought them all and they all made Ennard. We even got it with the goddamn survival logbook. So, especially in lieu of this being discovered after MatPat suggested a potential FNAF ARG, I think we're all going to be surprised if this has nothing to do with that possibility. Honestly, I'm fairly certain that the only reason the Twitter account was revealed despite joining in January of 2021 was because of this leak and because people found out, okay? They were certainly going to be more delayed before revealing, suggesting that this was probably going to open in 2023, which also just so happens to be the time that Fazbear's Fright opens in Universe, the location we explore in FNAF 3, which, if you thought was opening later or earlier than that, I hope that this confirms the time frame for you, but like, these things aren't a coincidence. Not with Scott, not with the man who released the second FNAF game 87 days after the first, assuming that the first one would fail. No way, unless I'm crazy, which is entirely possible. And at 10, Scrap Baby. Scrap Baby is a creepy animatronic. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Okay, Scrap Baby is by far creepier than the normal baby animatronic because, I mean, it's scrapped. So this costume certainly does it justice. Animatronics are a difficult costume to really make, okay? I mean, it's understandable because, you know, we're people and unfortunately don't have robotic limbs for the most part. Or if we do, we typically try and make it look like a real leg instead of a robot leg. But Scrap Baby is even more difficult because, you know, it's a scrap animatronic and it has a giant freaking claw. So yeah, Scrap Baby is very damaged and it's a recycled version of Baby, okay? Realistic reddish, orange, light blue hair, yellow pigtails. It's weird, alright? It's weird, okay? She has an orange top with red furls and it's very damaged. Yet somehow Instagram user Gaia Spaziani was able to recreate this in an awesome way, okay? So very well done, and maybe you can use it as inspiration for yourself. And at 9, Springtrap. Oh boy. Craftix Gaming's YouTube channel features a video of a real Springtrap costume, and honestly, it's terrifying. Springtrap is the main antagonist of FNAF 3, and this costume is freaking nuts, okay? This is a very good costume, and while Springtrap may not be the scariest animatronic per se, he's not someone that I'm gonna tussle with, you know? However, I do want to talk about what's going on with this character, because my guy, you just dressed up as a possessed man who is inhabiting an animatronic unable to die, but yet still somehow decaying. I don't get it. You're quite literally dressing up as a serial killer at this point. Like in the FNAF world, if you dressed up like this, it would be you dressed up as like Ted Bundy. It was like an equivalent in this world, okay? So if you want to be in FNAF that badly, maybe don't dress as a serial killer is all I'm saying, okay? I know that's ironic coming from me, given that I wear a purple shirt on the regular, but do I look like I want to be in FNAF? No, I cry about it on the daily. I have made things very clear that I don't want to be in this world, and if you don't know that, go watch more videos, okay? But this is nuts, okay? That's insane, and if Springtrap was delivering me my pizza, I probably would cry. And at 8, Ennard. Costumes don't really have to be elaborate to be scary, okay? Take this for example. This Ennard cosplay by the YouTube channel Skywarped33. This entire endoskeleton, like spaghetti bits, they aren't there, but the lights and sounds make it even more frightening than you'd think, okay? The face also opens up, and I think that we all know how I feel about animatronics who can move their face at will, or at least move their face in separate sections, okay? It's not something that should be allowed. However, even without all the parts and the various eyes, this Ennard cosplay is not something that I would want to run into in a dark alley, especially not after that goddamn vent repair minigame, because that caused me to have serious issues, okay? I used to like spaghetti, man, okay? Now what do? I won't be ordering spaghetti from this delivery service, that's for damn sure, although if they do have Ennard spaghetti on the menu, I might have to. But no, okay? Especially if the driver shows up wearing this, because holy crap, that would be terrifying, and I would rather die than see a real-life Ennard. So yeah, maybe actually don't do this, at least if you're delivering to me. And at 7, the Sun and Moon Drop Candy. The daycare attendant is a sun and moon-headed animatronic-themed thing, creepy dude that is consisting of 2 personalities that share the same vessel and security breach. The character is like a mascot for 2 candy brands though, and they go by the names of Sunny Drop Energizing Candy and Moon Drop Sleepy Time Candy. These candies are actually how we figured out the name of the animatronic, but the animatronic, like, he chills out in like the daycare, which is a whole other like question, but then as soon as the lights go off, the moon shows up, and it's unknown if moon is activated when the lights go out in the daycare specifically, or if it's just when the area around him is dark. But however, being able to order the candy would actually be kind of cool. It would be a great addition to the app. I mean, it wouldn't really be like, it wouldn't actually be energizing or sleepy candy, because I mean that's just caffeine and melatonin pills, but even if it's like just branded hard candy, I feel like it would be kind of a cool addition. It would in essence be a form of collector's item because of that, and the amount of exclusives that this service could have kind of horrifies me. As someone who is constantly broke, the amount of exclusives, this is gonna be costly. I might have to give up literally my apartment for it. In at 6, Buff Helpy. Okay, so this may not be like cosplay or a costume that someone could reasonably wear, but Buff Helpy is probably the most disturbing non-cosplay character that I can really include on this list. If you don't already know, somehow, Buff Helpy is a meme that was created on a Daco FNAF meme review video and has ever since been haunting him and the rest of the community, okay? Don't get me wrong, I do love Helpy, but this Buff Helpy meme generated a whole load of buff FNAF character ideas that now terrify me. Nowhere is safe from these horrific creations. If you look up any character, you're bound to find a buff version of them at some point. It's kind of like those games where it's like, let's search up a character and see how long it takes them to be sexualized, and then they scroll down. Do that with a FNAF character, but see how fast it makes them buff, okay? It's the same thing that happens to Chica, but buff, okay? No matter what this is, like what form of psychological torment this is, I would not wish it on my worst enemy. However, I'm talking about it because, you know what? It's hilarious. If Buff Helpy showed up delivering my pizza, I would constantly order from this place. Not because I want to see some like buff shirtless dude in a Helpy mask actually hand me my food, but because that is the most genius marketing ploy ever, and I would be very proud of them. Halfway through, in at number 5, Exotic Butters. Exotic Butters. Exotic Butters. Cringy white guy aside, despite the terrifying ships involving Exotic Butters with other characters, yeah, sad to say I'm not exaggerating that. Exotic Butters X Ennard is a real thing. Go watch the video. It would still be nice to have an Exotic Butters joke somewhere in this delivery service. Maybe a certain dish or category of food is made with quote-unquote exotic butters, or maybe they just like sell sticks of butter that are imported from somewhere else. I mean, it would be absolutely hilarious. They could also just do a thing where like you're ordering a basket of bread or whatever, but instead send exotic butters, like kind of like that scene from Sister Location. Or since that would probably cause some issues with people who don't actually understand the joke, maybe just like an April Fool's Day joke thing where like every time you click on a menu item it just says you're ordering exotic butters. I don't know, they may lose business that day, but it would be hilarious, and I feel like Scott doesn't really care about making money, so who knows. I don't quite know how it would work, but I mean, exotic butters is such a low-hanging fruit at this point, and I didn't think about it until Amanda reminded me, which is kind of sad. In it for Nightmare. I've said it before and I will say it again. Nightmare is the scariest animatronic from these games, hands down. Get it? Because I put my hands down. This guy will get me every time, and it's one of the reasons that I refuse to play FNAF 4. The other one is Nightmare Fredbear, okay? But at least I don't have to really deal with them in real life, right? Oh wait, yeah, just talked about it. This is only like a nightmare character created in the mind of a coma patient in a video game, but it is still the worst thing ever. Especially thanks to Zombunny Creations on Amino Apps, okay? We've got both Nightmare and Nightmare Fredbear. Ironically enough, Nightmare Fredbear is played by their twin sister. It's ironic because Elizabeth Apton is sometimes presumed to be Crying Child's twin sister, and anyway, these absolute hulking costumes are going to make me, let's say, drop a Snickers bar in my pants. If I saw this in real life, Jesus, imagine like actually like living in a house that's kind of laid out like the one from FNAF 4, and then like your kids want to play a prank on you, and then they dress in these and they come from either side. For God's sakes, I would actually rather die. If that is what's going to happen, I do not want kids. My grandparents' house is kind of laid out like that. Like not exactly, but it has like 2 sections of like on either side of the room, okay? So that could theoretically be reenacted, and if that ever happens, I'm going to cry. So if you start delivering my pizza dressed as Nightmare, actually good for you. Getting close to the end, in number 3, good food. However, personally, I would like to see actually good food come out of the delivery service, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't really have high hopes for it. I am pretty skeptical, mostly because they're just menu items that the restaurant that is doing this will also start making, and since the quality of those items is only associated with the virtual dining concept store, being Fazbear delivery service, instead of actually the restaurant that's making it, they can probably get away with slacking. Since if the quality of, let's say, your Mr. Beast burger isn't the greatest, I'm thinking, oh, I'm not going to order from Mr. Beast burger again, despite it being the Wendy's that made it. So in my head, I'm like, yeah, I can order from Wendy's, but let's avoid Mr. Beast burger despite them being literally the same kitchen. Do you see what I'm saying? So like, I'm hoping that these restaurants or actually end up making this, like that make the food, will be making enough from it that they actually want to have it be good quality, even after the initial wave of orders, okay? I also hope that we'll have more than just like pizza and like the same pizza that the place would make regularly, okay? For some reason I had the idea of like pizza balls from the Multiverse of Madness, okay? Because honestly that would be unique and that would be awesome. But like that, aside from the pizza rolls that they initially said that they would have, okay, the ones with like the unique twist and game tie-ins that we still have no idea what that means. I want more unique things than just pizza rolls. You know, you get me? But ultimately, in number 2, Glitch Trap. We know my issue with Glitch Trap, alright? We know that I just want to watch William Afton burn in the deepest pits of hell and then leave me be. I want him to be in actual hell and then stay there for all of eternity so that I can move on with my life, okay? I hate this I always come back thing that he's got going on, okay? It's stupid. And despite being dressed as the purple guy on various occasions, I still want William dead. So, when I saw this frighteningly realistic looking Glitch Trap costume, my nerves hit an all-time high. I think the sheer simplicity of a Glitch Trap suit is definitely something that makes this a hell of a creepy costume, since, you know, the stitches here are very accentuated. It's very clear, it has higher contrast than the actual suit in the game, but either way, it's freaking creepy. And if a serial killer is going to hand me my pizza, I don't know, I was gonna say something that would make the cops concerned, and I feel like I've done that enough, so like, let's not have serial killers hand me my pizza, okay? But you know what, good job, Zumbunny Creations on Twitter, okay? But like, why'd you do this to me? And finally, into number 1, Purple Guy. While Purple Guy, again, isn't an animatronic, and I guess neither is Glitch Trap or Vanny, but you know what, I had to pad out this list somehow. I think seeing some dude dressed in purple delivering me my freaking Freddy Fazbear branded pizza would actually scare me to death. Like, I don't wear purple on this channel anymore because people kept calling me the Purple Guy, and the cops don't need any more ammunition against me, but also because I can't actually find that shirt at the moment. But still, this is something that I would absolutely do. If I had a car, I honestly might have actually delivered food for the Freddy Fazbear's pizza delivery service if it ends up opening in Canada. And you know damn well that if I was doing it, I would be dressing in all purple with a security badge on my chest, maybe even like a purple phone case for the occasion, just because it would be hilarious. Okay, I don't need a spring lock crank, those aren't actually a thing in real life. While the term spring lock is used in real life, it's a totally different mechanism from what's actually in FNAF, okay? I'm certain most of you get the whole spring locks are real line from the Spring Locks and You How to Not Die Remastered thread from the FNAF wiki. However, actual spring locks are just locks that use spring. Like, from my research, what I gathered was that a spring lock in real life is, in simplest terms, if your front door's deadbolt was on a spring. Every other instance talking about real spring locks is just, it simply brings you to that page, or it quotes that page. So yeah, spring locks as they're used in the games do not exist in real life, okay? The term is used, but in the real life it's 2 separate words instead of 1, and they are nowhere close to the same thing. Well, first of all, let's get this out of the way instantly. If FNAF was real, it would be horrible. Just straight up. 5 kids would have gone missing on one of their locations, and the company probably would have closed down. But let's assume that people would still end up going, whether it's because they didn't believe the lies or thought that the government made it up, or because it's their choice, or because they're a YouTuber who wants views. Why are you looking at me like that? Well, assuming that people still went to the restaurant because perhaps maybe they vanished around the area instead of inside the place, what would it be like to live in a real Five Nights at Freddy's? For a kid, it would be pretty awful, but you also wouldn't know it. The world would be dangerous and anyone could be William Afton's next victim, but you wouldn't know that there was a serial killer on the loose with murderous animatronics able to disguise themselves and hide in plain sight that are willing to kill at any moment. But I mean, like, to be fair, that's also like real life, minus the animatronics. For adults, if you have kids, you may be worried. I mean, any parent is always worried about their kids, but if there was a group of kids who went missing in your area, I'm sure that there would at least be a small amount of paranoia. And honestly, it would be reasonable. I mean, I grew up in a house where my father was always worried. So much so that my sister couldn't walk up to her friend's house up the street without him watching to make sure she was okay. And while that would probably be extreme for most parents, if there was a very real threat of kidnapping, I'm sure that there would be a lot of curfews. For the sake of this entire thing, we also have to assume that the police didn't investigate the interiors of the animatronics themselves, despite them smelling like death and leaking body fluids, including blood. Since that's something literally anyone with common sense would check when investigating the disappearance of children and then learning that animatronics are leaking blood and smelling like a dead body. But what of the technology that we see in these games? Would animatronics that can alter their appearance be realistic? No. Of course not. The springlock suits, the illusion discs, the twisted animatronics, and the like are all extremely improbable considering the actual technology of not only our time, but the 80s when this would have normally taken place. At least, if we have a rough idea of the timeline, which honestly at this point, we could be totally wrong about the timeline. The technology in the games is so highly advanced that we have absolutely no idea what else they could have access to. They could have smartphones in the 80s for crying out loud. And if they don't, then William should have capitalized on that rather than murdering countless innocent kids, because he could have literally been a billionaire. The highly advanced technology would have to be disregarded in terms of the abilities of William Afton, so while this seems like a fight that nobody could really win, realistically, it wouldn't be as bad as we think, at least in those terms, since even Chuck E. Cheese, the closest thing to Freddy Fazbear's in our world, obviously, still only has the most simple robotic abilities known to man, despite the popularity of Five Nights at Freddy's and their ability to capitalize on that trend by taking some of those concepts, like the advanced robotics, not the dead kids, and then converting them into real life, because like the concepts in the actual pizzeria, not having kids go missing, like I said, that's a bad idea. Although based on comments left on previous videos, especially about how a real-life Freddy's would happen, there have been plenty of people that are willing to die, or more likely to go to Chuck E. Cheese if it was more dangerous for some reason. Y'all are weird. But one final query. How would YouTubers handle it? Clearly, there are YouTubers in this world thanks to the mention of MatPat, or at the very least Game Theory in the Fazbear Frights books, so what of the others? Well, we would most likely not be talking about FNAF, something that I'm sure a lot of you would enjoy, but also something that you wouldn't be aware of, which is a whole other can of worms that I won't be getting into today, because you wouldn't know about FNAF because FNAF wouldn't be a thing. However, I'm sure that there would be plenty of true crime and conspiracy YouTubers heading to a or the same Freddy Fazbear's where the kids went missing in order to solve the case, or really just talk about it and get nowhere with it. Sounds like someone I know. Since they don't have the clearance or the equipment to do an actual investigation, or on a potentially closed case. Shane Dawson would 100% have gone there for that same conspiracy theory video, and the psychic twins would definitely have showed up at some point and definitely sensed something, but not quite known what it was. Ooh. MatPat may have made a food theory video about it because he made a food theory video about Chuck E. Cheese, but the thing is, these YouTubers coming to investigate, would they be William's next targets? It's an interesting question because as far as we know, he's only killed one adult, and that was Henry. Every other victim has been a kid, so while they may be in more danger, there would clearly be a bigger issue in trying to deal with these YouTubers, especially if they get killed or die mysteriously shortly after visiting a Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. It would probably start some form of curse rumor that would only get more people to go there to try to solve that case. But how would Freddy's have dealt with the pandemic? Would they have made enough to survive the years of quarantine? Or would they, like our Chuck E. Cheese, have to file for bankruptcy? Would they get to open their Pizzaplex? Or would some problematic tweets from William Afton rise and cause the restaurant to get cancelled for calling Chica a he? These are all good questions that we will never really have an answer for because, well, FNAF isn't real. And that's why people keep commenting that nothing in these videos is scary. No, it's not real. It can't actually hurt you. That's why it's not scary. Scary is subjective. Just relax.